They stood then Artemidorus waiting the street for Caesar to pass, a procession of conspirators, Brutus, Cassius, Casca, Decius, Metellus, Trebonius, Cinna, and Ligarius accompanied Caesar and Antony as they walked to the Senate. Artemidorus hands the letter to Caesar and implores him to read it. Caesar remarks that personal cares are unimportant to him. When Artemidorus persists, Caesar assumes he is deranged and snubs him. Amid Cassius's fears that their assassination plot has been exposed, Antony is lured away from the Senate room by Trebonius. Metellus requests that Caesar grant Publius Cimber, his banished brother, permission to return to Rome. Caesar refuses his request because there are no grounds for revoking the decree. Cassius and Brutus beg him to reconsider, but Caesar adamantly resolves that he is constant and will not change his mind. As the conspirators kneel before Caesar, first Casca, then the others, stab him. Brutus stabs him last as the astonished Caesar cries, "Et tu, Brute?" Then Caesar dies. The conspirators rejoice. Then amid the commotion, Trebonius reports that Antony has fled. Brutus encourages the men to drench their hands in Caesar's blood and go to the marketplace to proclaim the triumph of liberty. Cassius notes that this ritual may be performed in the future to commemorate their rebellion. Antony's servant enters and tells Brutus that although Antony loves Caesar, he will serve Brutus if he is not penalized for his past association with Caesar. Brutus assures the servant that Antony is safe and bids Antony come to him. Although Brutus is convinced that Antony will be a valuable ally, Cassius is skeptical about his motives. Antony sees Caesar's bloody corpse upon his return. He insists that if the conspirators plan to kill him, they do it immediately so that he may die with Caesar, whom he loved. Brutus tries to convince Antony that although the killing seems ruthless, it was done out of consideration for the Roman people. He tells Antony that once they reassure the public of their intentions, they will devote to him the reasons that they killed Caesar. To show his solidarity with them, Antony shakes each of their bloody hands, marking Trebonius' still clean palms. Visibly shaken, Antony invokes Caesar's spirit and begs his forgiveness for making peace with his murderers. He commends Caesar's courage, causing Cassius to doubt his loyalty. Antony reassures Cassius that once they explain why Caesar had to die, he will surely align himself with them. Brutus asserts that Antony will understand the reasons. Antony asks that Caesar's body be brought to the marketplace so that he may eulogize his friend. Although Cassius tells Brutus to allow Antony to speak, Brutus gives Antony permission. However, Brutus decides that he will speak before Antony to detail the reasons Caesar was murdered and explain that Antony was given permission to speak. Brutus hopes that letting Antony speak will calm the anguished Romans, illustrate his own compassion, and improve the public image of the traitors. While alone, Antony sorrowfully apologizes to Caesar for not avenging his death. He predicts that Caesar's death will bring civil strife and destruction to Rome. Until his vicious death is avenged, Antony fears that Caesar's troubled spirit will wreak havoc on the city. Octavius' servant enters and sees Caesar's body. Because Octavius is Caesar's appointed successor, Antony implores the servant to immediately return to Octavius and tell him to remain outside of the city for fear of his life. He also tells the servant to come to the marketplace to hear his funeral address. They agree that the public's response will determine what Octavius should do. Caesar is killed by a group, but only acknowledges Brutus. The betrayal by his dear friend is certainly far more painful than by those of the other traitors. The now famous line, "Et tu, Brute," may also be understood as Caesar's recognition that his death must be justified if Brutus were to participate. The fact that Antony, his other dear friend, has retreated serves to highlight the intense fear that pervades the Senate. The image of bloody hands creates a striking visual element in the scene. The conspirators' hands are visibly stained, a horrifying image. No matter what happens, they are undeniably responsible for Caesar's death. Cassius is correct when he assumes the ritual will be repeated, but he does not imagine the circumstances that ensue. Convinced of the power of honor and of his loyalty toward Rome, Brutus summons Antony. Antony, overcome with emotion upon seeing Caesar's body, is suddenly unafraid to die. The rest of Antony's actions in this scene have two meanings. While it seems he is enlisting with the conspirators by shaking their hands, he is also taking responsibility for Caesar's murder. His hands are stained with Caesar's blood, a symbolic act of accepting his death. Antony specifically marks Trebonius, whom he also holds responsible for Caesar's untimely demise. Antony's character noticeably wavers between moments of resolve and the desire to preserve his own life. When Antony insists on giving a funeral oration, it may seem he wants to pay tribute to his friend. However, Cassius's concern about this opportunity emphasizes the power Antony may have to sway public opinion. It is essential that Antony does not vow to avenge Caesar's death, but rather apologizes for meeting with the conspirators, then predicts chaos. At this point in the play, he has resolved to do nothing but speak eloquently at Caesar's funeral. Antony's mention of Octavius reminds the audience that there is a predetermined chain of command in Rome. Because Octavius is safe from harm at the end of this scene, it is clear that he may soon affect the plot. Question 1. Caesar is killed by a group but only acknowledges A. Brutus, B. Cassius, C. Decius, D. Metellus. Caesar is killed by a group but only acknowledges Brutus. Caesar famously cries, "Et tu, Brute?" before dying. Question 2. Antony sees Caesar's bloody corpse upon his return. He insists that if the conspirators plan to kill him, they A. shall not live to see another day, B. will suffer the wrath of the gods, C. are not unlike Caesar himself, D. do it immediately. Antony sees Caesar's bloody corpse upon his return. He insists that if the conspirators plan to kill him, they do it immediately so that he may die with Caesar, whom he loved. Question 3. By the end of Scene 1, Mark Antony has resolved to A. avenge Caesar's death, B. leave Rome forever, C. do nothing but speak eloquently at Caesar's funeral, D. replace Octavius as Caesar's successor. By the end of the Scene 1, Mark Antony has resolved to do nothing but to speak eloquently at Caesar's funeral.